This is question 25 from section 1 of the 2014 BMAT, and in this question we're asked which of the options would strengthen the argument. So let's have a look at the passage. First, the writer says that you should think twice about taking painkillers when you have the flu, and so this is their opinion about what we should do. But they say the reason for that is that painkillers can help the spread of flu, so they do more harm than good. So as we'll see, this is basically a summary of the evidence they're about to give, so it's based on evidence, but also saying it does more harm than good is weighing up the pros and cons, so that is their opinion. The first piece of evidence they give is that painkillers reduce muscle pain and headaches, but also lower your fever, so that's just a medical fact. Why is that relevant? It's because fever decreases the growth of viruses, because viruses find it harder to replicate at higher temperatures. So again, a biological fact. And lastly, they say that some studies show that reducing fever means that viral infections last longer, and that allows more virus to be passed on. So saying what the studies show is also a fact. So what's their argument in this case? Well, they're basically saying that if you take painkillers, then that helps viruses replicate, and that means that you spread the virus more. So that gives you a reason to think twice. So it looks like the structure of the argument is basically, because of all these facts, they think painkillers do more harm than good, and that's a reason to think twice about taking them. So that makes this an intermediate conclusion. They explicitly say that their conclusion, that you should think twice, is a result of that. And to summarise, they're just saying because painkillers reduce fever and that stops viruses replicating, the painkillers help spread flu, and that's your reason to think twice about taking them when you have flu. So let's have a look at the options and see if any of them would strengthen this argument. In fact, if you browse through them, there's a few you might think strengthen the argument that you should think twice about taking painkillers for flu. So we'll come to those in a second. First, let's look at a couple. So which ones do you think definitely don't strengthen the argument at all? Well, for instance, let's look at C. C says that the studies on reducing fever were done on animals instead of humans. So why wouldn't that strengthen the argument? Well, it's basically suggesting that one of the pieces of evidence is less relevant than it might seem, because maybe the case in humans is different from animals. So it seems like this option would actually weaken the argument by undermining the evidence, instead of strengthening it, so that can't be the answer. And what else doesn't seem like it could possibly strengthen the argument? Well, if we look at D says that the best protection from flu is an annual vaccination. But if we look at the argument, it's just asking whether taking painkillers for flu is a good thing at all, or is it overall harmful? So whether there are also other better kinds of protection isn't really relevant. Also, this is about protecting yourself from getting flu in the first place, whereas this is the argument's talking about what you do once you get flu. So either way, D isn't really relevant to what the argument's saying. So let's have a look at the other three. A says that overusing painkillers makes them less effective for headaches. Does that strengthen the argument? Well, it does give us a reason to use painkillers less, and that means in particular for flu, if we already have some reason not to use them, then that just gives us even more reason. So it does seem to strengthen the argument a bit. If we look at B says that taking painkillers for flu makes it more likely you'll return to work while infectious. Would that strengthen the argument? Well, the argument's saying you shouldn't take the painkillers because it will increase the chance of you spreading flu, and B would make it even more likely for you to spread flu. So that does seem to strengthen the argument. And lastly, if we look at E says that you're more likely to accidentally overdose on painkillers if you have a virus. Does that seem to strengthen this conclusion? Well, yeah, because flu is a virus, and it's saying that it's giving us more reason to think twice about taking painkillers because we're more likely to overdose if we have flu. So why are two of these not actually the answer? So I think there are two main reasons. So the biggest reason is the argument is specifically that you should think twice about taking painkillers for flu because the painkillers help spread flu, which makes them do more harm than good. So it's specifically thinking twice for that reason, and only one of these three options relates to that reason that spreading flu is bad, and that's B. So that suggests that A and E aren't the answer because they're not related to that. Another reason you might think is that A and E are reasons not to take lots of painkillers, but they're not necessarily reasons not to take any at all. whereas B is a reason not to take painkillers at all. So either way, it looks like A and E aren't the answer, whereas B does strengthen the argument even when we take this specific reason into account, and so B is the answer.